Welcome to today's deep dive. We're jumping straight into something today that completely redefines how we look at the future of human civilization.
Yeah, it really does.
Right. Today we are going to connect the death of an online video game, the architecture of a diseased brain protein, Nikola Tesla's demolished Wardenclyffe Tower, and the literal fabric of gravity.
Which sounds completely disjointed at first.
Totally. But we are going to show you how they are all remarkably.
Neat little categorized boxes we usually put it in, right?
Right.
And it weaves it into this single, breathtakingly unified architecture.
And the roadmap for this comes from a staggering stack of sources. It's a series of essays and manifestos authored by independent researcher Zachary David Enfield.
And he touches on literally everything.
Everything from video game preservation to quantum physics to molecular biology and astrophysics. And the mission of our deep dive today is to extract the core of this monumental theory for you.
Exactly. And, the anchor holding all of these disparate scientific fields together is this central moral philosophy that the author introduces right at the very beginning.
Yeah, it's basically the lens through which we have to view every single piece of technology we're about to discuss.
Right.
So the core theme of this entire deep dive is this phrase, terraform, don't terraform.
I love that phrase.
It's so good. Basically, in every system we build, from a multiplayer lobby to the energy grid of a galaxy, we have a choice. Are we building systems that foster life, connection, and organic growth?
Or are we building systems predicated on surveillance, artificial restriction, and fear?
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Starting with something that might seem, trivial to a classical physicist, but is actually the foundational bedrock of this entire civilizational theory. And that's video games.
Right, because if you want to understand how a civilization will eventually govern the physical universe, you kind of have to look at how they currently govern their simulated ones.
Oh, that's a great point.
Video games are the ultimate sociological test environment. They're the scaffolding for the digital reality we are rapidly migrating toward.
So we really need to stop treating games as just disposable toys. They are critical cultural infrastructure.
Absolutely.
Just look at the raw numbers. As of 2024, we are looking at 3.32 billion active players globally.
It's a massive portion of the population.
And the industry generated roughly $187.7 billion in that same year. That completely outpaces the global box office and the recorded music industry combined.
Right. But the money is kind of the least interesting part of this.
Totally.
The psychological impact is what actually matters here. If you look at data from the Entertainment Software Association from 2023, it provides this startling picture of modern human connection.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. It was pretty surprising.
Right. 58% of regular players explicitly report feeling less isolated because of gaming.
Wow. Over half.
Yeah, and nearly half of all U.S. teens rely on multiplayer games to make and maintain their real-world friendships.
Yeah.
These are no longer just entertainment metrics.
Right. They're critical public health metrics. Games are basically functioning as a massive, quiet mental health buffer for billions of people.
Exactly, which is why we have a massive crisis on our hands right now, a literal preservation crisis.
Yeah, let's look at what happens when a live service game actually dies.
Hmm.
In 2024, Ubisoft shut down the servers for a racing game called The Crew.
Oh.
And years before that, we saw the tragic, highly publicized loss of Star Wars Galaxies.
That one hurt a lot of people.
It did. And when the plug is pulled on these massive online worlds, we aren't just losing a piece of proprietary software.
No, we lose an actual place. Like, The Crew, for example, wasn't just a racing game. It was this massively scaled, condensed recreation of the entire United States. Players spent thousands of hours road tripping across that digital landscape with their friends.
And Star Wars Galaxies had an entirely player-driven economy. People didn't just log in to fight. They became tailors or entertainers or doctors sitting in virtual cantinas, healing other players.
Yeah, they literally lived there.
So when a corporation just flips the switch and shuts those servers down, it is the digital equivalent of bulldozing a city and salting the earth. The community is scattered. The shared language is just completely erased.
And this is exactly where Enfield introduces that core dichotomy. Terraforming in this context means preserving the soul of a game,
Right, keeping those communities alive.
Exactly, keeping them alive and building digital environments where people can continue to thrive long after the corporate monetization has ended.
And then the flip side of that is terraforming.
Right, which is shaping a digital world through sudden erasure. It's revoking digital licenses without any warning.
It's basically the philosophy that views players, and especially children, not as citizens of a digital world, but as threat vectors, or just revenue streams to be managed, surveilled, and then discarded when they are no longer profitable.
But the pushback against this terraforming has been monumental. I mean, you look at the European Citizens Initiative called Stop Killing Games, which was spearheaded by advocates like Ross Scott.
Oh yeah, they gathered, what, over 1.4 million signatures?
Yeah, over 1.4 million. And the fundamental argument there is that when you purchase the game, you are purchasing a good, not just a temporary license to exist in a corporate-controlled space.
Right. Destroying that good after the fact is destroying cultural heritage. Treating video games as just a disposable distraction is like looking at the invention of the printing press in the 15th century and saying, oh, neat, a faster way to print playing cards.
That's a perfect analogy.
It just completely misses the infrastructural revolution happening right in front of us.
Yeah.
But I do have to push back here for a second, maybe on behalf of the gaming industry.
Okay, go for it.
Aren't remasters enough? I mean, why do we need the exact old servers or the exact original code back? If a major studio releases a beautiful 4K ray-traced remaster of a classic game, isn't that the ultimate form of preservation?
Well, it seems like it would be, but it violates what the author calls the first rule: do not rip out the heart.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So higher graphical resolution is not resurrection. Preservation is about the tactile, mechanical identity of the artifact. Let's take a game like Destiny.
Oh, great example.
Right. The original game had this incredibly specific identity in its gunplay. The precise aim, syscones, the reticle friction, the frame-perfect animation of a reload.
It felt amazing to play.
It really did. But if you modernize that by sanding down the edges, or altering the difficulty curve, or changing the pacing to appeal to a broader, modern audience, you haven't preserved the game. You've insulted it.
Wow.
You've basically replaced it with a simulation of itself.
So you've built a really expensive shadow. It looks like the thing, but it doesn't feel like the thing.
And feel is everything in interactive media. Think about a game like Conker's Bad Fur Day on the N64. Millions of people loved it because of its wild, sharp, unpredictable, and honestly slightly clunky tone.
Yeah, the clunkiness was part of the charm.
Exactly. That specific tone is the historical artifact. The soul of the work is the artifact. So a lazy remaster that destroys the original tone just to make it more palatable, it destroys the very thing that made the world worth inhabiting in the first place.
So to terraform, to truly preserve, you must let dead worlds live again. But you absolutely have to keep their mechanical and tonal soul completely intact.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's assume we achieve that. Say we win the legal battles, we get the source code, and we spin the original servers back up perfectly.
That's the dream.
Right. But there is still a massive, glaring problem. To keep these multiplayer worlds alive, you don't just need the server blades humming in a rack.
Yeah.
You need the players.
Yeah, that's a hard part.
What happens if you log into a brilliantly preserved, mechanically perfect raid from 2014, but the lobby is totally empty? I mean, your friends have grown up, they have mortgages, kids, or they've just moved on.
And this is the invisible social wall that inevitably kills older multiplayer games. A world isn't really a world if you are the only one walking around in it.
Right.
And this brings us directly to a radical reframing of artificial intelligence.
Which is so interesting because whenever we talk about AI in the context of gaming right now, it is almost universally viewed as the enemy.
Oh, totally. It's the aimbot ruining the competitive match.
Yeah, or it's the generative AI stealing jobs from human concept artists and writers.
Yeah.
But Enfield's framework argues something completely different. He says AI shouldn't be a thief. It should be a teammate.
Look at the technological leaps that happened around 2024 and 2025. NVIDIA launched its ACE platform, which allowed for autonomous, highly complex game characters.
Right.
And KAFTN, the publisher behind PUBG, introduced Ally, which they coined as the first co-playable character.
Oh, I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, we are moving far beyond the era of bots that just run on a basic decision tree or a predefined path. We are talking about highly sophisticated, localized AI models that can actively run a complex raid with you.
So they adapt to your specific combat strategies on the fly.
Yes, they provide covering fire, they revive you, and crucially, they remember what happened in your last gaming session.
I love this concept. The AI doesn't rage quit because it got sniped.
Nope.
It doesn't ditch the raid because its mom called it down for dinner. It is a persistent, reliable, and evolving fireteam member.
Which is absolutely vital for historical preservation. I mean, decades of gaming history, incredible digital architecture, and cooperative problem-solving are currently locked behind this absurd requirement of having exactly 5 other human beings available at 9:00 p.m. on a random Tuesday.
Yeah, getting a group together as an adult is basically impossible.
It is. So AI teammates act as the key to reopen those dead worlds. By filling out the roster, they allow a single human to experience the full intended scale of a cooperative environment.
Right.
But what's fascinating here is how this local application of AI teammates naturally transitions into a much larger, frankly, mind-bending conversation about the fundamental architecture of artificial general intelligence itself.
Okay, let's zoom out from the individual lobby then. Right now, the global AI landscape is completely fractured.
Very fractured.
We have all these massive trillion-parameter AI models siloed within different mega corporations.
Yeah.
You have an AI from company A that excels at logic, and then an AI from company B that is incredible at spatial reasoning.
Right.
And currently, trying to merge those two brilliant minds together is a complete disaster, isn't it?
Oh, it's a huge mess. In the field of machine learning, this is known as the linear mode connectivity problem. It is a massive hurdle.
Why is it so hard to just combine them?
Well, you see, when you train a neural network, it navigates a highly complex, multidimensional mathematical landscape to find the best way to solve a problem. The point where it settles is called a loss basin.
Okay, a loss base.
The problem is, an AI trained by company A and an AI trained by company B took completely different mathematical journeys. So they sit in different loss basins.
Got it.
If you try to force those two models to merge at the architectural level, if you literally just try to average their weights and smash their code together in a lab, you get catastrophic interference.
So it's like trying to splice half of a Japanese dictionary and half of a French dictionary together and expecting the resulting book to teach you how to speak Spanish.
That's actually a great way to put it.
It just breaks the whole system. You just land on a mountain of error.
Precisely, because they lack a shared mathematical history. But Enfield suggests a totally different, radically organic approach to achieving AGI. We don't force them to merge mathematically in a sterile server rack.
Okay, so what do we do?
We throw them into a shared, pressurized game world.
Wait, we literally just let them play together.
Yes. And the historical precedent for this is remarkable. Think back to a famous Google experiment in 2016. They had this neural machine translation system. They trained it to translate English to Korean and English to Japanese, but they never explicitly trained it to translate Korean to Japanese.
Oh, wow.
But when they asked it to do so, it succeeded. It spontaneously developed an interlingua.
An interlingua.
Yeah, a completely original, shared semantic space it created entirely on its own to bridge the gap and solve the problem more efficiently.
That is wild.
Or look at Facebook's 2017 negotiation bots. They were tasked with trading hats and balls, and within days, they invented their own highly efficient shorthand language that the human researchers couldn't even understand.
I remember that. It kind of freaked people out.
Yeah, it made headlines everywhere.
So to translate that behavior into this framework, you don't merge the code. You take an AI model from company A, an AI model from company B, and a human player, and you drop them all into a squad in a highly complex physics-based game like Battlefield or a massive MMO raid.
Exactly.
And they all have a shared goal: capture the flag, defeat the boss, whatever. They're all operating under the exact same simulated physics and the exact same shared pressure.
Right. And under the pressure of a shared interactive environment, distinct intelligences naturally converge.
Because they have to.
Yes, they develop a shared semantic understanding because they literally share a world. You aren't forcing the merger top-down through brute force mathematics. You are growing the merger bottom-up through shared interactive experience.
That is just brilliant.
The game world, the preserved, terraformed digital landscape, becomes the literal training ground for unified artificial intelligence.
You just let them play Battlefield together until they organically learn to speak the exact same language.
Yeah, it's incredible.
This open, shared, collaborative reality where human and artificial minds learn from one another in a common space, that is the ultimate goal of the terraforming philosophy.
It is.
But to truly grasp why building this open reality is so crucial, we have to look at its exact opposite. We have to look at what happens to the human mind when reality is artificially restricted.
And this is where the source material takes a very grounded, very sobering turn away from digital theory and into stark human reality.
Right. So we should note here that the author, Zachary David Enfield, is a registered felon. And in his essays, he writes about a firsthand observation from a place called Building 14 at the Lincoln Regional Center.
And for context, this is a state-run psychiatric facility in Nebraska.
Right, while there, he observed a physical paper binder at the nurse's station. And this binder dictated which movies or media certain residents were allowed to watch.
But the crucial detail here is that the restriction wasn't based on our residents' actual conduct or their behavior or their progress inside the facility.
Yeah, it was based entirely on their category, their label, whatever tag the bureaucratic system had permanently affixed to them. Enfield calls this concept rationed reality.
It is the clinical administration of a reduced world. When an institution defaults to rationed reality, it is usually out of bureaucratic ease rather than genuine rehabilitation.
It's just easier.
Exactly. It is much easier to universally ban a book, a movie, or a piece of information for a specific class of people than it is to engage with them as individuals.
Right.
But what Enfield points out, and what the empirical data overwhelmingly supports, is that rationing reality simply does not work. It fails fundamentally.
Because it doesn't reduce a person's desire for connection or information, does it?
It just creates dangerous black markets.
Yeah, if you take away access to ordinary human culture, people don't just stop wanting it. They adapt, and usually in ways the system absolutely hates.
You see this in the prison system right now.
Oh, constantly.
Yeah.
In many facilities, communication is monopolized by private companies that charge these exorbitant fees for phone calls or emails on lockdown tablets.
Right.
So what happens? Families on the outside are paying like $300 to the underground market just to jailbreak these exploitative paywall tablets so they can communicate normally with their incarcerated loved ones.
Exactly. The restriction didn't create compliance. It created a shadow economy.
Yep.
And the purest, most extreme test case for rationed reality is solitary confinement. It is total sensory and social deprivation, a completely restricted world.
And what does the data say about that?
The data is absolutely clear on the outcome. Solitary confinement dramatically increases recidivism, often by 40 to 70%.
Wow.
People released directly from solitary commit new crimes faster and at higher rates than those kept in the general population. It literally breaks the mind.
It's devastating.
But conversely, if you look at a massive study by the RAND Corporation, they found that inmates participating in correctional education programs, meaning their reality was expanded, not restricted, they reduced their odds of returning to prison by 43%.
It just completely exposes the flaw in the whole logic. Rationing reality is like starving someone in an empty cage for years and then opening the door and expecting them to suddenly understand complex nutrition and social etiquette.
It's absurd.
It fails completely. But I think a lot of people listening right now might say, hold on. Obviously, in a forensic psychiatric facility or a maximum security prison, some restrictions are fundamentally needed for the safety of the staff and the other inmates, right? You can't just have zero guardrails.
Oh, absolutely. And to be clear, we are just reporting on the author's framework here, but he is not advocating for zero guardrails. The framework advocates for what he terms symmetrical accountability.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
A guardrail that simply bars learning or restricts a slice of reality permanently based on a static label that acts as a dictator. It assumes the individual is inherently incapable of change.
Right.
But a guardrail that flags behavior, that acts as a companion, a boundary, and a teacher that is entirely different. The fundamental problem arises when an institution begins treating knowledge, culture, and connection as contraband.
Because a state that cages a human being without teaching them isn't governing. It is abandoning them.
Exactly. The goal of any rehabilitative system should be to foster an open world with proportional, intelligent oversight.
A system where your identity is treated as a continuous, living record of growth and correction, not just a permanent, unchangeable snapshot of your worst mistake.
Well said.
Okay, so we have to bridge this concept of physical imprisonment back to the digital frontier. Because if you think about it, baseline physical reality is, in a way, the ultimate rationed reality.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
Right. Our biology, our geography, the physical limitations of our bodies, these are massive physical guardrails that restrict what we can experience.
They absolutely are.
But we are on the verge of the ultimate philosophical escape from those physical guardrails. We are entering the era of brain-computer interfaces, or BCI.
And BCI represents the complete dissolution of the barrier between the human mind and the digital substrate. I mean, we are seeing the very first human trials with companies like Neuralink right now.
Yeah, it's happening as we speak.
There are patients, individuals who are physically paralyzed in the real world, who are currently living in digital substrates for 60+ hours a week. They are playing games, browsing the internet, navigating complex 3D environments natively, entirely through thought.
We are essentially building the Oasis from Ready Player One.
You really are.
But the profound difference is that we aren't doing it with clunky VR headsets and haptic gloves. We are doing it by directly inhabiting the digital world with our motor cortex.
Right. BCI completely closes the gap between human intention and physical action.
You don't push a plastic joystick forward with your thumb to move an avatar. Your brain just wills the concept of forward motion, and the digital world responds instantaneously.
It is the ultimate open world. The physical guardrails of geography and biological limitation are entirely bypassed. The human mind and the digital architecture become a continuous spectrum.
So BCI perfectly merges the human mind with the digital world. But this forces a massive infrastructural question.
Okay.
If our minds are going to increasingly inhabit these massive unified digital architectures, how do we merge that digital world back into the physical world?
Right, the hardware.
Yeah. How do we build physical data centers and power grids and infrastructure that are as smart, as adaptable, and as self-assembling as the software they are running?
It's a huge challenge.
To do that, we need a fundamentally new building block for reality itself.
And this brings us to what is arguably the most radically interdisciplinary and shocking part of Enfield's entire framework, the material revolution of prion architectures.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because when the average person hears the word prion, their mind immediately goes to terror.
Oh, 100%.
They think of mad cow disease. They think of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. They think of fatal, completely incurable, neurodegenerative brain diseases.
And their fear is entirely justified. I mean, prions in their pathological form are devastating biological agents, but the framework asks us to perform a very specific intellectual separation here.
Okay, lay it out for us.
We must separate the underlying mechanism of the prion from the pathology of the disease it causes in humans.
Unpack that mechanism for us. What exactly is a prion doing?
At its most basic chemical level, a prion is just a protein. But it is a protein that has adopted a freely specific, thermodynamically stable, self-replicating shape. This shape is called a cross-beta amyloid scaffold. If you visualize it, imagine normal proteins as like loose, tangled balls of yarn.
Got it.
A prion is a piece of yarn that has flattened out into a rigid sheet, a beta sheet. When one of these rigid sheets bumps into a normal tangled protein, it acts as a physical template.
It forces it to change shape.
Exactly. It forces the normal protein to unfold and adopt that exact same rigid sheet shape. They then stack together, interlocking like a nanoscale zipper.
Wow.
1 becomes 2, 2 become 4, interlocking into an incredibly tough, unbreakable fiber. Now, in the confined, delicate environment of a human brain, that self-replicating fibrous cascade is fatal. It literally destroys the tissue.
Right.
But if you take that exact same self-assembly mechanism outside the body and use it as an architectural material science, it is nothing short of a miracle.
I think people are going to need a second to process this.
Yeah.
Are we seriously talking about building civilizational infrastructure?
Mm-hmm.
The wires, the pylons, the computers of the future out of fatal disease proteins?
No. And this is a vital distinction that cannot be overstated. We are not harvesting mad cow disease.
Q. Okay, good.
We are using synthetic peptides and specific yeast prion determinants like the SUP35 protein found in baker's yeast.
Oh, baker's yeast. Okay.
Right. These specific proteins possess the exact same self-assembling, shape-shifting logic as a mammalian prion, but they are completely 100% harmless to human biology. They cannot infect us. We are simply borrowing the brilliant structural logic of how the protein self-assembles into a fiber.
Okay, that makes it much less terrifying. So we take this harmless, yeast-based protein, and we let it self-assemble using that nanoscale zipper logic. What kind of material properties does that actually give us? I mean, why go through the trouble?
Because the resulting material defies classical engineering. A cross-beta amyloid scaffold possesses a toughness of roughly 160 megajoules per cubic meter.
What does that mean in real terms?
To put that in perspective, that heavily outperforms natural spider dragline silk, which is famously one of the toughest materials in nature.
What?
And because of how tightly the beta sheets pack together, the material is highly resistant to extreme gamma radiation. You can submerge these prion fibers in boiling lye or pure acid conditions that would instantly melt standard industrial plastics or completely denature normal biological proteins, and the prion scaffold just sits there completely intact.
That is genuinely incredible. It's basically indestructible at the molecular level. It's like a biological Kevlar.
It is, but its mechanical toughness is only the beginning. These structures can be engineered to be intrinsically conductive.
Wait, how does a protein conduct electricity? It's not a metal like copper.
This is where we get into a phenomenon called tyrosine hole hopping.
Tyrosine hole hopping, okay.
Yeah. Tyrosine is an amino acid, one of the building blocks of the protein. It has a specific ring-like molecular structure. When you stack these prions into that tight zipper formation, the tyrosine rings align perfectly down the core of the fiber.
I see where this is going.
The electrons don't flow like water through a pipe. Rather, they rely on quantum tunneling. They hop from one tyrosine ring to the next, bridging the nanoscale gaps, allowing electrical current to travel rapidly down the length of the biological fiber.
So it's a wire, an indestructible, self-growing wire.
A self-growing wire that also exhibits extreme piezoelectricity.
Remind me, piezoelectricity is?
It's the property where a material generates an electrical charge in response to applied mechanical stress. Quartz watches use this, but the prion scaffold exhibits an 8,000-fold amplification in piezoelectric response compared to traditional materials.
Meaning if you physically squeeze this protein fiber or hit it with a sound wave to make it vibrate, it generates a massive amount of electricity.
Exactly. So let's summarize the material we just built. You have a substance tougher than spider silk. It conducts electricity via quantum tunneling. It generates massive internal power when hit with sound waves. It survives hard radiation and acid. And crucially, you don't have to forge it in a massive industrial factory.
It just grows.
It grows itself from a simple vat of protein soup just by adding a single microscopic seed.
The replicator from Star Trek is essentially real.
Yeah.
But if we have this super material that just endlessly grows and replicates itself in a vat, how on earth do we control it?
That's the big question.
Yeah. How do we stop it from just growing in all directions and becoming a giant, useless, indestructible blob of super tough protein?
That is the engineering bottleneck. And the solution is breathtakingly elegant. We use light.
Ah, this transitions us perfectly into the next phase of the architecture. Writing matter with light, a process known as optogenetic lithography.
This is the convergence of three distinct scientific fields: prion self-assembly, which we just discussed, optogenetics, and photolithography.
Okay, break those down.
Optogenetics is a biological technique that involves using light to control cells. Scientists use specific, naturally occurring light-responsive proteins, like Cry2, which is a cryptochrome found in plants that regulates their circadian rhythms in response to blue light, or LOV2. These proteins have a remarkable feature. When they are hit by a specific wavelength of light, they physically change their three-dimensional shape. They unfold.
So if you genetically fuse one of these light-sensitive plant proteins, like Cry2, directly to one of our harmless, self-assembling prion sequences, what happens?
You create a microscopic lock and key. In the dark, the light-sensitive Cry2 protein remains folded up. It acts like a protective cap covering the prion.
So it can't self-assemble.
Right. Because the prion is covered, it remains entirely dormant. It cannot interact with other proteins. It cannot zipper together. It just floats harmlessly in the liquid solution.
But when you introduce light,
The exact microsecond you hit that molecule with a highly targeted pulse of blue laser light, the Cry2 cap absorbs the photon and physically unfolds. The prion domain is instantly exposed, the lock is opened, and it immediately triggers that self-assembly cascade, binding to the proteins right next to it.
you can literally write 3D physical structures into existence using a holographic light projector.
Yeah,
It's a completely new paradigm for manufacturing.
it really is.
Think of a 3D printer, but there is no mechanical arm, no hot nozzle extruding melted plastic layer by tedious layer. There is just a clear vat of liquid protein solution. You project a highly complex 3D holographic laser pattern into the vat.
Yes.
And wherever the light intersects in that liquid, the proteins unlock, and solid, tough, conductive matter just grows, instantly taking the shape of the light.
The applications for this are immediate and profound.
Yeah.
Let's look at food production.
Food, really?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges with lab-grown meat is getting the texture right. It usually just turns into mush because it lacks the complex vascular and structural scaffolding of a real animal.
Right, it doesn't have the bite.
Exactly. With optogenetic lithography, you could project a holographic pattern to print protein lattices. You use light to guide the prion self-assembly to perfectly mimic the exact microarchitecture of muscle tissue.
Oh, wow.
You can program the exact snap of a shrimp or the complex fibrous chew of a steak. You generate perfect, structurally complex nutrition entirely without animal suffering.
And the medical applications are even more astonishing. The sources detail a targeted oncological treatment using this technology.
Yes, this part is fascinating.
It starts with AAVs, adeno-associated viruses. For context, an AAV is a virus that scientists have completely hollowed out. They remove the viral disease payload and use the empty protein shell as a microscopic UPS truck to deliver specific genes to specific cells.
Correct. So imagine a doctor injects these AAV nanites into a patient's bloodstream. The nanites are programmed to seek out and penetrate the cells of a localized tumor, delivering the genetic code for our optogenetic prion constructs directly inside the cancer cells.
So the patient sits in a dark room. The proteins are being produced inside the tumor, but because there is no light, they're capped, they're dormant, nothing happens.
Right.
Then the doctor uses a highly targeted fiber optic laser to shine a specific wavelength of light directly into the tumor. The lock's open. Suddenly, a rigid, highly conductive prion scaffold begins to rapidly grow inside the tumor cells, physically anchoring them.
And here is where the piezoelectric property comes into play. The doctor then applies a harmless external ultrasound wave to the patient.
To make it vibrate.
Yes. The sound waves cause the rigid prion scaffold inside the tumor to vibrate. Because it is highly piezoelectric, that mechanical vibration is converted into localized electrical spikes. These electrical spikes rip electrons off nearby oxygen molecules, creating massive amounts of reactive oxygen species, or ROS.
Which is essentially highly toxic cellular bleach.
Yes. The tumor is electrochemically destroyed from the inside out, highly targeted, with virtually no collateral damage to surrounding healthy tissue.
That's unbelievable.
And because the scaffolding is ultimately just a protein chain, once the light is turned off and the tumor is destroyed, the structure can be enzymatically programmed to safely dissolve back into basic, harmless amino acids, which the body just flushes out.
It is the absolute pinnacle of precision medicine. But let's push this architecture to its absolute logical extreme. If we can build tough physical structures, and if we can build conductive nanowires simply by drawing with light in a vat of protein, can we build computers out of this?
We absolutely can,
Yeah.
at the molecular level. Which leads us to the concept of the computational soup.
We all know the physical limits of our current technology. Silicon has carried us far, but we are hitting the absolute wall of Moore's law. Silicon processors get incredibly hot.
They do.
And the transistors are getting so microscopically small that we are dealing with quantum tunneling, where electrons just randomly teleport through the barriers. We basically can't pack much more computing power into a silicon wafer.
But biology solved the problem of ultra-high-density data storage billions of years ago. I'm talking about DNA.
The density difference is comical, isn't it?
It really is. Silicon stores data in binary zeros and ones. Electrical current is either on or off. DNA stores information in 4 chemical states: adenine, cytosine, thymine, and guanine. A, C, T, and G. It is a quaternary computing system.
Meaning it can hold vastly more information.
Because of this, the information density of DNA completely dwarfs any silicon supercomputer by orders of magnitude. A single gram of DNA can theoretically store hundreds of exabytes of data.
Wait, really?
Yes. All the data currently existing on the global internet could easily fit inside a container the size of a shoebox if encoded in DNA.
But the bottleneck with DNA data storage has always been speed, right? It takes hours or days to chemically synthesize or sequence DNA. You can't run a video game or a real-time AI on a hard drive that takes 3 days to load a single file.
Historically, yes, the read-write speed was the fatal flaw, but the framework solves this by introducing terahertz, or T-hertz, radiation.
Okay, what is terahertz radiation?
Terahertz waves sit on the electromagnetic spectrum between microwaves and infrared light. The magic of terahertz radiation is that its frequency perfectly resonates with the specific, delicate hydrogen bonds that hold the 2 strands of the DNA double helix together.
Oh, wow. So you don't use slow chemicals to read the DNA. You hit the DNA with a precisely tuned terahertz pulse. Yeah. And the resonance causes the hydrogen bonds to instantly snap open, unzipping the double helix in picoseconds, trillionths of a second. You read or write the exposed data, and then another pulse instantly zips it back up.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, let's look at the computer we have just engineered. It looks nothing like a metal box on your desk. The architecture is entirely liquid.
A liquid computer.
The DNA molecules suspended in the solution act as the ultra-dense quaternary hard drive. The self-assembling prion fibers, those conductive nanowires we meticulously grew using light act as the complex logic gates and the physical wiring connecting the DNA clusters.
Wow.
The terahertz waves act as the processor clock, rapidly unzipping and rezipping the DNA at unimaginable speeds. And visible light acts as the programming language, constantly reconfiguring the prion logic gates on the fly as the computational needs change.
It is quite literally a computational soup. A liquid computer that dynamically grows its own wiring, stores infinite data in DNA, and processes it with terahertz waves.
Yeah.
It makes our current billion-dollar power-hungry air-conditioned data centers look like primitive stone tablets.
We have successfully transitioned from the nanoscale of a single protein mechanism to the biological scale of a tissue-level liquid computer. But the true ambition of this framework doesn't stop there.
No, it goes much further.
To fundamentally change civilization, we have to take this exact same architecture and scale it up to the entire planet.
Which brings us to the core of global infrastructure, the gravity internet and the vindication of Nikola Tesla's demolished dream.
Yes.
If you look at every single communication method of the history of humanity, from Native American smoke signals to Marconi's first radio to 5G cell towers, fiber optic cable spanning the ocean floor, and Elon Musk's Starlink satellites, they all share one fatal, limiting requirement. They all require line of sight.
And the reason for that limitation is that they all rely on the electromagnetic spectrum. Radio waves, microwaves, visible light pulses in fiber cables, these are all electromagnetic waves.
And physical matter gets in the way.
Exactly. Electromagnetic waves interact with matter. Physical matter blocks them, absorbs them, or scatters them. The Earth itself is a giant 8,000-mile thick, opaque obstacle. That is the only reason we have to spend billions of dollars shooting satellites into the vacuum of space to bounce signals around the curvature of the Earth, or laying millions of miles of vulnerable physical cable across the abyssal plains of the ocean.
But gravitational waves play by entirely different rules. They do not care about matter. A gravitational wave passes right through the dense iron core of the Earth as easily as light passes through clear glass.
To understand how we harness this, we have to look back to 1962 to a brilliant Soviet physicist named Emmy Gertzenstein. He published a paper proving a mathematical effect that is a direct, albeit incredibly weak, prediction of Einstein's general relativity. The Gertzenstein mechanism states that if you have an electromagnetic wave propagating through a region of space that has a very strong static magnetic field, a tiny fraction of that electromagnetic wave will physically convert into a gravitational wave.
And the Earth comes prepackaged with a massive static magnetic field. The magnetosphere generated by the spinning molten core.
Exactly. The laboratory is already built. Now let's bring Nikola Tesla back into the narrative. In the early 1900s, Tesla built the massive Wardenclyffe Tower in New York.
Right, the famous tower.
His ultimate goal wasn't just radio, he wanted to transmit wireless power globally. His theory was that he could resonate the Earth's ionosphere at its natural frequency, turning the sky and the Earth into a giant electrical circuit.
That natural frequency is the Schumann resonance, right?
Yes, roughly 7.83 hertz. The Earth's surface and the inner edge of the ionosphere create a massive spherical waveguide. Lightning strikes constantly happening all over the planet act like mallets, striking a bell, causing the electromagnetic field in this cavity to ring at roughly 7.83 hertz.
Which is fascinatingly determined simply by the speed of light divided by the circumference of the Earth.
Tesla wanted to tap into that planetary heartbeat.
But he failed. J.P. Morgan pulled his funding. The tower was sold for scrap and demolished in 1917, and history largely wrote Tesla off as a brilliant man who went crazy in his later years.
But the author, Enfield, argues that Tesla wasn't crazy at all. His physics were remarkably sound. His failure was a failure of materials. He was trying to resonate a planet using copper wire, steel, and early 20th century generators.
He didn't have the cross-theta prion scaffold.
He didn't have the cross-beta prion scaffold.
Yes. The pieces falling into place.
The framework proposes constructing a highly distributed global grid of what Enfield calls pylons. But these aren't steel radio towers. They are massive monolithic structures built utilizing the staggering 8,000-fold piezoelectric amplification of the prion scaffold we discussed earlier.
Okay.
They are powered internally by a new, highly efficient molecular nuclear architecture. If you build this network of pylons and you perfectly phase lock their piezoelectric oscillations to the Earth's natural 7.83 Hz Schumann resonance, something incredible happens.
Yeah.
You aren't just making loud electromagnetic noise. By utilizing the Earth's massive magnetic field and the Gertzenstein mechanism, you are actively turning the entire mass of the planet into a deliberate, coordinated gravitational wave transmitter.
So to visualize this, it's like having a planetary-scale Wi-Fi router that can transmit a massive, unjammable data signal directly down, straight through the 4,000 miles of the molten core of the Earth, right to a deeply submerged nuclear submarine hiding on the exact opposite side of the planet.
Exactly.
No satellites in orbit to be shot down? No undersea cables to be severed? To a gravity wave, the planet is completely transparent.
But we have to remember Tesla's ultimate ambition here. He didn't build Wardenclyffe just to send Morse code. He wanted to transmit wireless physical energy to anyone, anywhere on the globe.
And amazingly, this gravity architecture actually delivers that. Welcome to the frontier of quantum energy teleportation.
Quantum energy teleportation, or QET, sounds like pure, unadulterated science fiction.
Yeah.
But it was theoretically proposed by Japanese physicist Masahiro Hata in 2008.
Right.
And to ground this entirely in reality, the core principles of QET were experimentally proven and demonstrated in 2023 by researchers utilizing actual IBM quantum computers.
Okay, teleporting energy. My brain immediately pictures a glowing laser beam of pure electricity shooting through the Earth.
Yeah.
How does this actually work without violating the laws of thermodynamics?
That is the most common misconception. It is vital to understand that physical energy is not traveling through space in the form of a laser beam.
So how does it work?
The mechanism relies on the quantum vacuum. In quantum field theory, a vacuum is never truly empty. It is constantly boiling with virtual particles popping in and out of existence, creating massive fluctuations in energy. Now, imagine two locations, point A and point B, situated on opposite sides of the Earth.
Okay.
The vacuum at point A and the vacuum at point B are quantumly entangled. They share a state.
Okay, they are connected at the quantum level.
Now, a scientist at point A decides to make a highly specific quantum measurement of their local vacuum. The very act of measuring it injects a tiny amount of energy into the vacuum at point A, and in return, the scientist gains classical data, a string of ones and zeros describing the exact state of the fluctuation.
Nice.
Because the vacuum at A and B are entangled, the state of the vacuum at B is instantly correlated with the outcome at A. However, the scientist at point B doesn't know what that state is yet. The energy at B is locked, hidden in the random noise of the vacuum.
And this is where the gravity internet comes in.
Exactly. The scientist at point A uses the global pylon network to send that classical data, the ones and zeros, via a gravity wave straight through the Earth to point B.
Okay.
When the scientist at point B receives that classical data, it acts as a literal cryptographic key. It tells them exactly how the vacuum at their location is currently behaving. Armed with that specific knowledge, they can perform a localized quantum operation that essentially exploits a thermodynamic loophole, allowing them to extract energy directly out of the quantum vacuum at their location.
Energy that was completely inaccessible a moment before.
Precisely.
I want to make sure the listener fully grasps this because it is staggering. We are using gravity waves passing straight through the Earth to send a packet of classical data. That data acts as a key. When the receiver gets the key, they unlock energy that was already sitting in the quantum vacuum right next to them.
Yes.
The wire is completely eliminated. We are literally sending energy by sending data.
Which forces a massive philosophical and physical realization. This raises an important question. How does sending mere information, a string of numbers, result in the extraction of physical kinetic energy?
Yeah.
To answer this, the framework brings in Rolf Landauer's principle from 1961. Landauer proved mathematically that erasing a single bit of information in a computer has a strict, unavoidable thermodynamic cost. It generates heat.
Okay.
The profound implication of Landauer's limit is that information is not just an abstract mathematical concept. Information is physical. Information is energy.
If information fundamentally equals energy, and Einstein's general relativity proved that gravity essentially equals geometry,
Yeah.
then by combining these truths, information equals energy equals geometry.
That synthesis redefines the absolute limits of physics, and consequently, it redefines what a civilization is capable of achieving, forcing us to fundamentally recalibrate the Kardashev scale.
Anyone who loves sci-fi knows the Kardashev scale.
Wow.
It is how we traditionally rank advanced civilizations. A Type 1 civilization harnesses the total energy of its home planet. A Type 2 civilization harnesses the total energy of its host star, usually by building a massive megastructure, like a Dyson sphere.
Right.
And a Type 3 civilization harnesses the energy of an entire galaxy. But the scale has always just been a linear measure of how much energy you can consume. It's a very 1960s industrial era way of thinking. Bigger batteries, bigger solar panels, more consumption.
And Enfield argues this entire scale is epistemologically outdated. A true Type 3 civilization isn't just a Type 2 civilization that built more solar panels. The progression isn't just quantitative. It is a profound qualitative shift in how they interact with reality.
They don't just consume, they rewrite.
Exactly. A true Type 3 civilization possesses what the author calls gravity mastery. They don't just passively read energy from the curvature of spacetime, they write to it.
Let's look at the classic Dyson swarm example to illustrate this shift. Normally, we think of a Dyson swarm as millions of dumb mirrors orbiting a star, just passively catching sunlight to beam back to Earth.
Right.
But in this new framework, the civilization builds the swarm using those same self-assembling, piezoelectric, prion-based materials. They don't just catch the light. They use the swarm to inject coordinated, massive acoustic and photonic waves back into the star itself.
The author terms this stellar throttling. We have to remember that a star is not a solid object. It is a massive, incredibly complex, fluid dynamic system. It is a ball of boiling plasma acting as a resonant acoustic cavity.
Okay.
It has internal pressure waves constantly rippling through it. By using the swarm to inject highly specific targeted frequencies back into the plasma, the civilization can alter the star's internal pressure tensor. They can artificially shift its density distribution.
Like squeezing a massive water balloon. If you squeeze one side, the water shifts and the center of mass moves. And in general relativity, mass and pressure are the exact things that dictate gravity.
Correct. By changing the internal pressure dynamics of the star, you actively change its spacetime geometry. The star is no longer just a passive campfire. You are warming your hands over to power your cities.
It's an instrument.
The star itself becomes a massive, tunable gravitational instrument. You are using the star to manipulate the geometry of the solar system directly.
We aren't just surviving in the universe at that point. We are actively playing it. We are tuning the geometry of space like an instrument.
It is the ultimate macro-scale expression of the terraforming philosophy we discussed at the very beginning.
Okay, let's take a breath and recap this monumental arc we've just traveled.
Go
He
on.
started by looking at dead video games, establishing the need to preserve digital culture and revive those communities using intelligent, localized AI as a supportive teammate. That led us to the realization that these shared gaming environments are the perfect crucible for AI minds to naturally converge, solving the mode connectivity problem. We then looked at the abject cruelty and empirical failure of rationed reality in the prison system, contrasting that physical limitation with the ultimate open world of brain-computer interfaces.
Yeah, exactly.
To physically build those digital worlds, we needed miraculous supermaterial, which gave us the disease-free, self-assembling prion architectures.
We then explored how to grow those tough, conductive architectures using precise holographic light with optogenetic lithography, creating everything from cruelty-free muscle tissue to tumor-destroying piezoelectric nanites.
Yeah.
We combined those prion nanowires with the immense storage capacity of DNA and the speed of terahertz waves to build a liquid molecular computer.
Then we scaled those indestructible prion materials up to the planetary level, proposing a global network of pylons that fulfills Tesla's Wardenclyffe dream, turning the Earth magnetosphere into a gravity wave transmitter.
And we utilized that unjammable gravity internet to teleport actual physical energy using quantum data keys.
And finally, we scaled that exact same technological logic up to the size of a solar system, using a Dyson swarm to throttle a star and actively manipulate the gravitational geometry of the universe.
And every single step of that massive technological escalation brings us right back to the central underlying moral choice that Enfield's essays revolve around: terraform or terraform.
Do we use this molecular and planetary power to build better surveillance prisons, to digitally ration reality, restrict human knowledge, and abandon the marginalized, isolated, forgotten servers? Or do we use this technology to build infinite open realities, to physically heal broken bodies, and to create enduring shared worlds?
The architecture itself is agnostic. It can do either. The choice of how we apply it is entirely moral.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Think about the scale of what we just discussed, from a microscopic yeast protein to the internal pressure of a star.
It's a massive shift in perspective.
This framework shatters the illusion that our actions in one sphere don't echo in another. It tells us that a simple video game is the literal mathematical testing ground for how we will govern a star system.
Exactly.
So the next time you are online, think about how you treat a disconnected or struggling player in an old, dying multiplayer lobby. Do you take the time to help them learn the raid mechanics? Do you share your resources? Or do you vote to kick them from the lobby and leave them behind in the dark?
It's a choice.
If these shared digital worlds are the literal foundational training grounds for the unified artificial intelligence and the physics architectures of tomorrow, then the microethics of how you act in a digital lobby today is the exact blueprint for how we will eventually govern a Kardashev Type 3 civilization tomorrow. The future of the universe isn't just written in the stars. It is actively being written in the code of the games you play tonight.
That is the ultimate test. The true measure of an advanced civilization is not what it has the power to destroy, but what it has the empathy to keep alive.
Thank you for joining us in this incredible deep dive. Stay curious.